If you have a question for Dr. Donna, please do leave it on my page and I will be happy to answer the question for you. Hey, good evening, everybody. It is Thursday, and every Thursday you know that you have an appointment with your doctor. So welcome to another episode of Talking with Dr. Donna. We are here to build generational health. What does that mean? That means that the generation starting with you right now is healthier physically, spiritually, mentally, and environmentally than the previous generation. That's how we're going to start to change this premature death that we have in our community. Tonight, we're still talking about Women's History Month, so I want to highlight somebody who is very special to me, near and dear to my heart on this Women's History Month. I am highlighting my maternal grandmother. That's her right there. That is Cloeva Parker Scott. That is my mother's mother. And as I talk about generational health, she is a prime example of what I'm talking about. So my grandmother, born in Louisiana, moved out west in the 1940s, didn't know that she had diabetes. She didn't recognize that she had diabetes until her eyesight started to get a little bit blurry. And at a really young age, my grandmother lost her sight from undiagnosed diabetes. But that didn't stop her. Why? Because she is a Scot. And so she continued to just do wonderful things. She is a missionary. She had a talk show. Every Saturday morning in Sacramento, she would be on the line praying for us, praying for everybody. And I think that might be just where I get my Wednesday morning prayer line from, my grandmother. So I wanted to give a nod and appreciation to my grandmother, Cloeva Parker Scott, for being an awesome grandmother and for giving me this platform and the mind to say we need to do something to end premature deaths, premature illness in our community. So my love to my grandmother, Cloeva Parker Scott, as we dedicate Women's History Month. We're going to talk tonight about coronavirus as well. That's what we've been talking about. That's what's here in the news. That's what we need to talk about. So let's look at where we are in coronavirus with our cases and our death. So here we are in Alameda County. Total, we have over 82,850 cases, total cases. We have about 1,392 people who have died from this disease. Now, somebody asked me the other day, are people really still getting infected with coronavirus? Are people really still dying? And the answer is yes. Yes, this pandemic is not over. This disease is still infecting people, still killing people. So I want you to see that in those cases. But as we look at our cases, we know our cases are increasing. I want you to look at our vaccination rate, right? So cases are going up. Vaccines, we're doing a much better job of vaccinating. But I want you to pay attention, as I always do, want you to pay attention to equity, right? Which is everybody getting treated the same way. And if you look at the people who are getting vaccinated, we still have the highest proportion of people who have received their second dose of their vaccine, if they're in a 2-dose vaccine, and being completely what we call vaccinated, meaning 2 weeks after either their second dose, if they've gotten Pfizer or Moderna, or after 2 weeks after their Johnson & Johnson 1-dose vaccine. We're still seeing that European Americans are outnumbering everyone else in terms of their vaccination rate, even though we know that the Latino community is hardest hit in terms of the number of cases and the number of hospitalizations and deaths now is moved into the Latino community, with that Black community being very, very closely behind them, number 2. So we should be vaccinated at a higher rate because we are most at risk, but that's not what we're seeing. As a result, True Vine Ministries, my church, has been partnering with California Office of Emergency Services, FEMA, Alameda County Public Health Department, and Lifelong Medical, and we are offering vaccinations free to you. All you have to do is come down and get it. We have a vaccination clinic tomorrow. On Saturday and Sunday, it is the second dose of Pfizer. So those of you who came down, got vaccinated in the first weekend of March, this is now your second dose. You need to come back on the same day. So if you were vaccinated on Saturday, you're coming back on Saturday around the same time to get your second dose. If you're vaccinated on Sunday, you're coming back on Sunday around the same time to get your second dose. 2 weeks after that, you will be fully vaccinated. We are not doing vaccine clinics on the 29th, which is Monday. And then we are also not doing vaccine clinics on Easter Sunday. But we are vaccinating Friday, Saturday, and Monday of next week. Then we're finished. Our vaccination clinics will be over. It'll be 4 weeks, 4 days a week. So hopefully you're going to get in and get your vaccine if you haven't already done so. All right. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about myths, right? Because the vaccines are out. There's 3 vaccines now. And with this 3rd vaccine, lots of people are asking questions about the vaccines. Are they safe? Still the same questions. I understand people are wondering. So let's get into, I'm going to do some myths, and then I'm going to tell you the truth. Okay? And I love questions, so I don't ever want you to feel like you can't ask a question. I'm sitting here monitoring the line. If you have any questions, go ahead and put it in to the chat or put it on my Facebook page. I'm going to try to get to your own questions that you might have. But we're going to go right now with some questions that are already here. So, question, are the mRNA vaccines experimental? That's kind of a question. I'm going to answer it, but it's going to seem like the answer is yes. But the answer is actually no. So let me just say that. The mRNA vaccines are not experimental. The use of the mRNA technology in this particular way is new. The mRNA technology is not new. It has been around for at least a decade. It was studied in the Zika virus. It was studied with the flu vaccine. And they needed to make some tweaks to it over the last decade. And with new technology, when this vaccine opportunity became available, they used this technology that had already been in existence to put it into this vaccine. So it is not experimental. The new vaccine and the way the technology is used is new, but the technology itself is not new. All right, next question. Have they, meaning the vaccines, been safety tested on animals? So these vaccines have not been tested on animals. They have used clinical trials with humans. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So next question you guys have is, have they been subject to long or medium safety testing on humans? Well, that's our clinical trials, right? So in our clinical trials, we have 3 phases of clinical trials. And in each clinical trial, you are, they test a certain number of people. They use a certain number of people to look at these clinical trials. They start out small with a small number, and then they increase, and then finally within phase 3, which is the final phase, usually lots of people, then by then they have tested lots of people. In these studies, we have, for both the Moderna and for the Pfizer vaccines, well over 40,000 people that were tested in the clinical trial prior to the vaccine being receiving emergency approval by the FDA. Now, though, we've had millions and millions of people who have received these vaccines. So in a way, we're testing it still, right? Because it is a new vaccine. In terms of Johnson & Johnson, they had about 22,000 people in their final phase 3 clinical trial. But again, thousands of people have received this vaccine since then. So I think that we can call that safety testing in humans, right? We know it's a new vaccine, so we know that it seems to be safe. Are the effects of the vaccine reversible? So no, and nor do you want the vaccine to be reversible. You want the vaccine to be given to you. You want your body to react to the way the vaccine is used, and you don't want that reaction to be reversible. Now, if you're talking about some of the side effects that you can get from a vaccine, well, those go away usually in 24 to 72 hours. Will the vaccine stop me from getting coronavirus? So this is an interesting question. So the manufacturers of the vaccines, they were asked to look at a vaccine that is going to prevent severe illness and prevent death. That's what the vaccine manufacturers focused on for this initial run of vaccines. They wanted to make sure that you were not going to get sick and be in the hospital or die. They didn't look at whether or not you would then transmit COVID still, or whether you could still get infected with coronavirus. That wasn't really their primary focus. They're starting to look at that now. But their primary focus was to create a vaccine that would prevent you from dying and prevent you from getting super sick and being hospitalized. Right now, our early studies are showing that you will probably decrease the risk of transmission from person to person, and you probably are not as susceptible to getting the virus once you've had the vaccine. And if you do get the virus once you've had the vaccine, you're probably going to have a very mild disease. So that's where we're landing right now on that question. Will the vaccines allow me to stop wearing a mask? Oh, goodness. I wanted to just strangle Senator Cruz today. I don't know if you saw it on the news today, but he was on the news and he'd taken off his mask and he was answering questions, and the reporter asked him to put his mask back on because the reporter, of course, is very close to him. And he told the reporter, I don't have to wear a mask. I'm fully vaccinated, and CDC guidelines say I'm following CDC guidelines. He didn't read the guidelines close enough, because the guidelines say even if you're fully vaccinated, you should wear a mask around people who are not fully vaccinated because of just what I said in the last question. We're not quite sure if you can still transmit the virus. So to protect everyone around you, you want to wear your mask even if you're fully vaccinated, unless you are around other people who are also fully vaccinated. Somebody please send this little snippet to Senator Ted Cruz so he can know what the CDC really says. All right. Does the Johnson & Johnson vaccine contain aborted human or monkey cells? Boy, I tell you, people come up with some stuff, don't they? No, they do not. And you know what? I read about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, but I said, you know what? Just because so many people ask me this question, I'm going to call Johnson & Johnson myself. I called the company, spoke to a pharmacist this afternoon, and asked this question, got all the ingredients of the vaccine, and none of the ingredients contain human or monkey cells. Straight from me to you. Straight from Johnson & Johnson pharmacist to me to you. Does not contain aborted cells. It does not contain latex, does not contain eggs, does not contain preservatives. It is a very safe vaccine. Do doctors have concerns about the mRNA vaccine's long-term effect on fertility? So I wouldn't say that we're concerned about the long-term effects on fertility. We have not seen that the vaccine impacts fertility. The American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology have come out with a statement where they are recommending that women who are pregnant or breastfeeding actually get the vaccine. So I don't think there's any major concern about fertility, nor is there, it seems to be a lot of concern around your baby or breastfeeding. So if you're breastfeeding or pregnant, they're recommending that you still get the vaccine. Why? Because it protects you from getting sick and from dying. That's why. Is there a risk of autoimmune disease, strokes, seizures, convulsions, or other side effects? Yes. Yes. There definitely are risks to taking the vaccine, which is why there's a number of questions that we ask people prior to giving them the vaccine. We ask about your health conditions. We ask about your medications. We ask about your past medical history, because yes, everything that you do or take has side effects. So we want to make sure you're safe. If you do have any of these diseases, it's always best to talk to your specific doctor first about your specific case to make sure that it is safe for you to receive the vaccine. Are the vaccine manufacturers liable for injuries or deaths caused by the vaccines? Now, this is an interesting question because I know a lot of people who are against taking this vaccine. This is one of the reasons that they cite, because if something should happen, that the drug companies are not liable at all. And that is true because of the emergency need for this vaccine, and the manufacturers recognizing they're creating a vaccine for a new virus using technology that had not been used before to create this vaccine, and doing it in a way that was time of it was increased, right? We did it faster than we'd done before. They also asked for some coverage for themselves in terms of doing good, right? They're doing good for the world, trying to create a vaccine, and they asked for there to be some coverage for them and protection for them as they created this vaccine. So yes, there is this clause. I don't know the amount, I don't know just how much, but there is some protection against liability around these vaccines. Should that stop you from getting the vaccine if it can save your life? No. If you have other reasons why you don't want to take the vaccine, that's fine. But should this be the reason that stops you from taking the vaccine, saving your life? Negative. All right. So, are there doctors and scientists recommending people not to take it? Of course. Of course. Scientists and doctors are not a homogeneous group. We have all sorts of thoughts and opinions, and even people who have medical training have decided not to take the vaccine. And so, of course, there are going to be people who recommend you not take the vaccine for various reasons. Some of it might be philosophical. Some of it might be just not, trusting the medical community. Some of it might be because of your own particular health condition that they recommend that you not take it. So yes, there are reasons that some people shouldn't take it. And yes, there are likely out there doctors and scientists who are saying, don't take it. But that's with anything, right? How effective is each vaccine? I think I have a table on that's probably better to show you. So there's 3 vaccines now. There's the Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So if you look here, you can see against death across the board, 100% effective, right? I mean, I really don't like to say 100%, so I say close to 100% effective against preventing death. All 3 of them, same efficacy. And when I say efficacy, I mean the same effectiveness, the same good, the same ability to prevent death. Almost 100% across the board. Now, the protection against severe infections. So that means that you're going to get really sick, protection against getting really sick, and protection against being hospitalized. So Pfizer is about 75% effective, Moderna about 100%, Johnson & Johnson, I'm sorry, that should be switched. The severe infections for Pfizer, it should be 95% effective against severe disease, 100% effective against Moderna, and about 85% effective in Johnson & Johnson. So across the board, in terms of against severe infections, it should be, they're pretty close, right? 95% for Pfizer, almost 100% for Moderna, 89% Johnson & Johnson. That's still really good. Those are great odds against preventing severe infections and hospitalizations. And then if we're looking at mild infections, that means, having, a little cough or a little runny nose. Most of the vaccine manufacturers said, we really weren't concerned about creating a vaccine to prevent you from getting the sniffles. That's not what they were attempting to do. So getting the sniffles, getting a mild cough, getting a runny nose, that's not where they were putting their money for this vaccine. It's against the severe infections and against death. And if you look at Pfizer, it is about 75% effective, Moderna about 94% effective, and Johnson & Johnson about 66% effective against mild infections. That's a little cough, a little runny nose. But super effective against preventing death, hospitalizations, and ultimately that's what we're looking at for these vaccines. Let's look at the next table. So this table really kind of looks again at the 3 vaccines. And it's really, again, looking at the effectiveness across the number of doses. You can't really compare vaccine to vaccine to vaccine. They were all studied in a different way. They were all looked at differently. And so you cannot really look at them side by side. We have them side by side here so that you can see, but it's really hard to say this study is compared to this study. They each looked at their vaccine at different time points to get this effectiveness. Pfizer looked at this effectiveness 3 weeks after the first dose. Moderna looked at it 4 weeks after the first dose. So it's hard to say if you look at all of them across the board at 4 weeks, what the percentage would be. It's really hard to say because we don't have that data. So instead of really looking at them side by side and trying to compare vaccine to vaccine, really you should look at individually what we looked at in that last table, severe infections and deaths. So I'm going to take some questions from the chat because I see there's a couple of questions out here. Oh, Zachary Carey has a question. I'm going to start with you. How long do you need to stay in quarantine if someone you know has been exposed? So that depends on if you're vaccinated or if you're not vaccinated. So if you are completely vaccinated and you're exposed and you have no symptoms, you actually don't have to quarantine. That's what the CDC says. If you are exposed by someone and you have symptoms, right, a cough, a runny nose, a sore throat, vomiting, diarrhea, any of those symptoms, then you want to quarantine those 14 days just as before. Those are for the fully vaccinated people. If you are unvaccinated and you are exposed, whether or not you have symptoms, you are still required to do that 14-day quarantine. Okay, so the quarantine status changes now based on how vaccinated you are. If you're fully vaccinated, that means 2 weeks after your second dose, if you're doing Pfizer or Moderna, or 2 weeks after your first dose of Johnson & Johnson. All right, lots of folks walking. Okay, should children under the age of 16 be vaccinated? Hi, Liz Adams. That's a great question. It depends on the vaccine. So again, each vaccine looked at their clinical trials and completed their clinical trials in a completely different way. Pfizer decided to do a clinical trial down to the age of 16. So they're the only vaccine that we actually have data on and how safe it is for being 16 and older. So if you're 16 and older, the only vaccine right now you're approved for is Pfizer. Both Moderna and Johnson & Johnson, you have to be 18 and older in order to get the vaccine. Now, Pfizer just announced today that they're starting to do clinical trials on kids younger than 16. And so we'll see where those clinical trials go. I think everyone, of course, in our pediatric population likes to move slowly. Nobody likes to experiment on the babies. So they're going to move slowly, and they're going to make sure it's very safe. But they are starting those studies, so we'll see what those clinical trials show, and then that will give us a gauge of the other manufacturer, the vaccine manufacturers will probably follow suit. I still think we probably won't have vaccines for our kids until 2022. All right, any other questions? Let's see. You guys are so smart out there. You don't have a whole lot of questions tonight. That's great. I do want to say, I get questions all the time about the vaccine. All the time about whether or not the vaccine is safe, whether or not people should take the vaccine. Taking the vaccine is a completely personal choice. I think that you have the right to make your decisions. I think that if you have questions about the vaccine, you need to talk to people who are professional, who are knowledgeable about the vaccines, so that you can get accurate information. That's what we try to do here on Talking with Dr. Donna, give you accurate information. There's so many people out there who are spreading false information about the vaccine, and that's why I wanted to go through that tonight, because I want you to know the difference between myth, the difference between theory and fact. And so I'm presenting you with the facts as we know it. If you have questions, first person you should talk to is your doctor. Ask your doctor, particularly since your doctor is the one that knows all about your personal medical condition, what medications you're on, your past medical history, whether you are at risk for developing any side effects that are serious from these vaccines. Talk to your doctor. And if you cannot ask your doctor a question, if you don't feel comfortable asking your doctor a question, you got the wrong doctor. Change doctors. You should not have a doctor that you cannot ask these questions to. If you feel intimidated, you feel like they don't listen to you, get another doctor. Get another doctor. You do not have to stay with someone who is not willing to answer your questions. Advocate for yourself, get a new doctor, and ask your doctor these questions about whether or not the vaccine is safe for you. All right. That is it. That's what I wanted to talk about tonight. Give you some facts about the vaccine, let you know where we are in terms of, yes, this pandemic is still out here. The virus is still moving. The more people we get vaccinated, the more and the faster we do that, the sooner we can stop all of these mutations, right? That's how the virus mutates, because it has more time to be out into the community. The virus does what it does. All viruses mutate. But if it's out in the community less because people are vaccinated, it's going to have the ability to mutate less and to change so that our vaccines are still working on these strains. All right? All right. I want you to take care of yourselves. I want you to make sure you still wear a mask. I want you to not let your guard down, because we're still dealing with people who are being hospitalized and people who are dying from this virus. So still take it seriously. Get the vaccine, check it out with your doctor, wash your hands, social distance, wear a mask, and protect yourself, okay? Reach out to somebody and just say hi on the phone, particularly to our seniors. I want you to make sure you just reach out to them and say, hi, just checking in on you, okay? We got to spread love, check on one another, and love one another during this time. So thank you for watching another episode of Talking with Dr. Donna. We are here building generational health. You have an appointment with your doctor every single Thursday at 6:30. Thank you for tuning in. Until next week, be safe. If you have a question for Dr. Donna, please do leave it on my page, and I will be happy to answer the question for you.